Hey everyone, Orbitalswan here, and today I'll be doing a tutorial on how I colour anime hair. So the example I'll be using today is a line art I've done that I'm working on currently with an art trade for an Instagrammer, pawprint9643 on Instagram, obviously. And I've been drawing the original character Tetsuya. And Tetsuya has blue hair and purple streaks down the bottom. So to start off, I'll grab my Copics and pick out all the blue ones so I can test on a separate piece of paper which ones I think suit his original colours. So grabbed all my blue ones, grabbed a little doodle page that I have a little book with all Copic paper that I use to practice or to get colours correct. So I've actually cheated, and before I made this video I figured out the colours I needed, so technically I don't really have to do this stage, but it's kind of self-explanatory. And so the colours I chose were night blue, light crockery blue, and ice blue. So when I'm colouring hair, I pick three of the base color, or three colours. One will be the base, which will be the lightest, so in this case ice blue. Then I pick a mid shade, which will be the light crockery blue, and then I pick a darker one, which is the night blue. Cool. So, and 3 is the minimum. No, actually, probably 2 is actually the minimum. You could use 2, but 3 gives the best effect. So, put that book away. Here we are. So, I pretty much in my left hand keep all my Copics that I'm using currently so I don't lose them, because that happens a lot. I put them somewhere and can never find them ever again. So I start off with my lightest shade, ice blue, and I just go about colouring the top parts. So with hair, the further down it goes, the darker in terms of shading. So I kind of imagine this imaginary barrier that goes across, about midway across all the hair, and that's where I'll begin to gradient it to darker. So if that made no sense, I'm sorry, I'm terrible at explaining things, but that's why you have this to look at. Okay, so I kind of leave, because his tips are more purple, so I'm going to leave the tips away for now. I'm not going to touch those too much. And in terms of your application of the Copics, of Copic marker in general, there are many different ways that I've been taught, but this streaking is fine. Okay, so just be, when you're doing, it depends the line art you've done, but for me I have to be mindful of the lines that I've designated for, like, right here would be darker because it's probably the most underneath of all my other hair clumps and strands that I have. So I don't have to worry about that right now because I'm just doing the base light. But it's just a good reminder for later on. So see how I haven't touched these tips? Leaving those alone for now. Okay, now we'll go to those tips. And even if he didn't have different colour streaks, I would still leave the tips alone because, one, they're going to be darker eventually anyway. I'll be using a different Copic for those, so it's just wasting more of my Copic right now if I were to colour in all of the hair. And this lovely streaking sound that I'm getting. Usually I put paper, another layer of paper underneath my desk. This time I think I just forgot to do it. But it just helps soak up all the Copic that goes through. Okay, so we're pushing that down. And as you can see, I'm moving the drawing along as I colour. This is because your wrist has a natural kind of flow. So rather than, to make life easier for yourself, move the drawing with your hand rather than trying to make awkward movements. Okay, so bring that all the way back. So, sweet. So you can see here, left the tips alone and just done the base colour. So now I grab, well, in this instance, because he changes hair color, I'm going to grab my purple that I'm going to use, which I think will be pale lilac. And then go to his tip. That's actually very dark, a lot darker than I thought it was. I might change that to a lighter one. Oh, there we are. Couldn't find it for a second. I just choose Pale Heath. That's probably one of the lightest violets you can get. Because when you're starting off your base layer, you don't want really anything too dark yet. You need to try just designating colours to begin with. So here we have some of the gradient thing. It's always hard, especially because since obviously blue and purple are such different colours, it's really hard to get appropriate shading for both and a good transition between both colours. But we'll see how I go today. A little bit under there. Okay. So I don't know if you can. It's a really light Copic, so I'm not quite sure if you can see it in the slide that I have. There we go. Okay. So that step usually wouldn't be in a lot of my colouring in because a lot of the hair I coloured doesn't usually gradient like that. But so now I would normally grab my mid shade, which in this case is light crockery blue, and I would make a line like this and then colour down. Line, colour down. I'm not quite sure a better way to explain it actually, but people ask me, how do you know where to put the shadows? I think it's just kind of practice and observation and looking where other people put shadows, and then you'll eventually figure out yourself why they've put them in which areas. But so we have that coming down. Colouring in the tips there. And then I'm not quite sure how much purple we're going to be seeing. I might just make it in the main fringe area. There we go. Colouring that down. In a perfect world, I would have liked to have chosen a lighter blue than the blue I've chosen. It's just, I don't have a lighter blue. Well, I don't have a blue. The lightest blue I have is too light to even see, so now you see here how I said before about this little clump right here that has kind of been drawn underneath all these other layers. So I just make that all for one darker. And then go back to drawing a line across the shadow like so, then pushing it down. Okay. So hopefully this is making sense. Just color. It's a lot, I find a lot of colouring, once you do it a lot, it just becomes intuition. There's no real set rule for any type of art, really. But with my colouring hairstyle, it isn't so much seamless tonal changes. It's more almost anime CG style. Bring that down. Alright, so now we're starting to get somewhere. So I'm going to go back to the purple I had, my Pale Heath, come back up and then try and bring it into some of this blue I have up here. Bring it through, grab the blue I had before again, bring it back down again. When you want Copics to start blending, because they're alcoholic based, do it while it's still wet. And you will eventually get a blend like so. See, even though they are completely different colours, they don't look too disjointed if you keep it wet. And also this paper does a lot for you. Like this, I can't remember the brand name, but if you get specific bleed proof paper, it does wonders for Copics. Just using normal 100 GSM sketchbook paper won't allow this kind of blending. So just keep going back and forth between. You could also be using the colorless blender. That also works. Not probably as well as having the original colors and then just going back and forth in this little technique to shade it all together. Because the colorless blender is pretty much just alcohol, and all it does really is push the color, which sometimes doesn't help with blending because it might push the colors away from each other, which is not what you want. By using the color that you already have into the other color, they will bleed together more often than not. Going back here. Then grab the other one, blend it down. And you can also do this with colour pencils, by no means, or watercolour. I use this with watercolour as well, and with colour pencils. The colour pencils I predominantly use are Prismacolor. They're oil-based, so they tend to blend really well. And the watercolours I use are general craft watercolours, nothing too fancy. I usually go for the light travel kind of packs. So I always find if I'm on the bus or something, oh, not the bus, the train. I would never draw on a bus. If I'm on the train, I find I can just do little watercolor studies. So hopefully, I think you get the gist of this blending thing. But I just finish the rest of this, and then go back. And that's, I don't know. Copics are just probably one of my favorite. Oh, that's a big leap. They're all different, using different mediums from Prismacolors to Copics to watercolors. They all have different applications and good for different things. Okay. Cool. So that's that of the tips done. Now, I'm gonna grab the darkest color, darkest shade, the night blue, and I'm going to find the darkest spots of the hair, where hair overlaps, folds, what have you, and indicate that. And whilst you're doing the dark, also keep the mid-tone in your hand, because you can blend it in, and so it isn't quite of a really stark line. So we have so he's wearing his headphones. Will be a little bit, indicate a bit of a shadow from the headphones, make it more 3D, not so flat. And then go back over, help it blend in. Bring that down. Might just cover it all dark. And then the underlayer here. Okay, and what I also do with the dark midtones is, you know, this line that we've created with the midtone, really lightly go over it with the dark. And also go over overlapping folds. But I don't know, it just gives if you do more digital art, I got this technique from when you would give it, when you gave a brush a borderline, and it would give this little bit darker line with all your strokes. And I don't know, it gives a really nice effect. Bring that down. And then it's just kind of a little game between one to another, pushing it down, then pushing it back. Okay. So, I don't know, not much else to say about this technique except just probably the most important thing is good color choices, because the color choices really affect, obviously, when you color a picture. But yeah, just with choosing a good mid base and darker tone is probably the biggest tip I can give you. With Copics, look with Copics, they give you a handy tip of having the number and the letter. So the ones that blend well together are usually 2 to 3 digits apart. So I'm not actually using that rule right now for my blending. But as a general rule, if you ever want to buy a Copic and then thinking, oh, what will shade well with this? If you were to grab this B12 ice blue, something that would shade nice with it would be a B14 or otherwise a B10. And so yeah, you just kind of go 2 digits either side, and it's usually they will more often than not shade really well together. Cool. So that's pretty much my process. Not really anything else I can explain about it. It's up to you, obviously, how much detail you want to go through with each hair strand or each hair clump, I suppose. This is just my hairstyle that I draw as, and this is how I colour. Okay, hope that helped in some way. The highlights, as you might notice, aren't very existent. I use just a white gel pen to go over that. And I've actually currently lost my white gel pen, but I don't tend to do too much of crazy highlights. What I would do, that I didn't really do in this picture, is see the transition between this base and this darker tone, and there's a little bit of white in the middle. I would just make the white bigger. I wouldn't start the mid-tone in the base. I would give a little bit of a white part left, like right across here. You can kind of see that. And I just haven't been able to do that here because I was blending too much. I was trying to gradient this too much and kind of forgot to leave enough white for that shading. But either way, I think this hair coloring style doesn't even really need highlights. But that's just a personal touch, I guess. And hope that helped in any way. I will do another tutorial on how I actually draw hair if you guys want it. But that's my Copic hair tutorial for today. Hope that helped, guys. Have a good day.